The Copyright Act protects the ownership of music works, artworks, printed works, whatever is created by another individual completely is protected by the Copyright Act. So it protects virtually everything that's been published.
In general, 70 years after the death of the creator, it provides institutes, educational institutes, with guidelines under which they can legally use material. The Educational Statutory licence allows institutes to use material for obviously their core business, which is education, and they're allowed to use it under certain conditions. So the Educational Statutory licence allows you to use particular parts of a work, say 10% or one chapter, but if you go over that you have to seek explicit permission. But it allows people to use stuff without having to seek permission every single time. Each TAFE institute pays an annual fee to have access to this licence, but it means again they don't have to seek single permissions every time they want to use someone else's work.
The statutory licence applies to music, art, the printed word, journals, video streaming, web, the internet, hard copies and soft copies. The internet is not copyright free. The internet is a minefield for the unwary, and it's also a minefield with copyright for the wary, because every web page is owned by someone. Check the source, use reputable sites, and if you use something on the internet, go through and check who owns it. Check if it is, you are able to use it, and always cite.
Most websites have a copyright policy or copyright statement. You should not assume just because the material is available on the web that it's available for you to use as you wish.
There are definitely limits on how much you can copy. If it's a print version, you can copy. If you're at the photocopier, you can copy one chapter or 10%. With a journal, it's a bit more interesting because you can copy one article on a single topic, but if there are multiple articles on the same topic in one journal issue, you can copy all of them.
Anthologies, you can copy up to 15 pages. Images are considered complete artistic works unless they're embedded in text, and then if you're copying that page of text, you can copy the image and it's considered part of your 10%. If you're taking the image as a standalone image, then it's an artwork and you need permission to use it. Artwork covers any sort of image or diagram or circuit layout or photos, that sort of thing. Anything that's not text, basically.
If you're using electronic readings and you post a chapter to your Moodle page, you can have that chapter, but now if you want to post another chapter from the same book, you must pull down the first chapter, and nowhere else in your institute can another chapter of that book be posted at the same time.
The 10% or one chapter or one article guideline still stands, and so across the institute you have to be aware of anyone else using the same resource, because only 10% can be up online at any given time. If a teacher wants to use something online, what we recommend is that they provide a link to it, so they're not copying holus bolus off the web page and reproducing it, which may not be legal, but they're providing a link so the student can go to the resource and see it firsthand.
We use a few sites where the guys can gather information. We don't download anything from those sites.
The fact that you're providing a link also allows us to know that within reason the material is current, it's up to date.
If teachers are reviewing their work at least annually, it ensures that resources that they've used from elsewhere are still current and relevant. It also helps manage the cost of the Educational Statutory licence, because some resources may no longer be being used, and so we'd be paying for something for no reason.
With online materials, especially if they're posted into Moodle or Blackboard or any other learning management system, what you need to do is each year you should check them, and so what you should try and do is remove any materials that you're not actually using.
If you have someone else's resource which you've put up on your intranet or into Moodle for your students, if it's there longer than 12 months and available to students, and it becomes what's called an anniversary copy, and under legislation it's considered to be a second copy and you'll be billed accordingly. So the electronic use notice is a standard notice which you have to attach to any communication of third-party materials, stating that it's being communicated under the relevant section of the Copyright Act with permission. Many institutes have it automated so that if a third-party work is accessed through the learning management system, the electronic use notice pops up automatically, and institutes also sometimes attach it as an automatic footer to emails. So the Copyright Act makes provision for people who may have an intellectual disability or a print disability, unable to read for whatever reason, and so you're allowed to make copies under those sections of the Act, providing that they are marked as being made for that exact purpose, and once the student has used them, then they're destroyed. Come to the library, that's usually where the Copyright Officer is to be found, and many library staff have a fairly general understanding of copyright, and if you need something more in depth, your Copyright Officer will be able to help.
Attribution is when you make record of where you've got your resources from, where you've got the information from, who owns it. So attribution will say who owns the copyright and who wrote the document.
If you're using third-party materials from anywhere, it's good practice to attribute, because the copyright owner has the moral right to be associated with their work.
You must directly attribute where you got your information from, its name, its date, its source, so that we can follow that story back. It's a pathway. So whatever you use, you just enable other people to follow it back. And it can also help yourself. If you need to find out where you've got something again, you can find it again.
So third-party attribution, where you've used someone else's work, you should list the title, the author, the date and publication place of the work, the pages you've copied, if it's an online resource, the direct URL, and the date that you accessed it. Most TAFEs have a template for easily creating the Verso page, where you list the title of the resource, the department that created it, the institute details, the ways it can be copied and how people can get permission for that. But it will also acknowledge the teacher as the author. They can't be acknowledged as the copyright holder, that's the institute, but they can be acknowledged as the author on that Verso page. Part of the attribution, aside from the Verso page, is having a footer throughout the document which states that it's copyright to that particular TAFE institute. Well, benefits are that the TAFE's material, if it's used by third parties, the TAFE will receive royalties for it if it's copied by other organisations, but it's also a good professional standard, it's marketing. So your material's out there and people know who it's from.
If you take the effort, you'll find quite commonly that permissions can be released, and therefore you won't be paying any fees for the material that you provided to students. Importantly, when you ask for permission, you ask the question that is from the broadest aspect of usage. So it covers hard copy and it covers digital. And the words that are used there are reproduction or reproduce, which is hard copy, and make available online through your learning management system. They're the words.
When you adopt a textbook, often there's materials that go with that, and something handy is a PowerPoint or a set of PowerPoints that go with your course learning materials. So what I do there is I make sure that I contact the publisher beforehand and I get them to approve the uploading of that material on Moodle, and then also indicate, usually either before the first slide or the second slide, where the materials come from.
It's not unusual to find copyright owners encouraging institutions, educational institutions, to utilise their material. They want to get their name out there. They want their material read. So they don't necessarily, or they're not always looking for monetary value for the material that's going to be provided to students.
A Creative Commons licence is when the owner enables anyone to use their work following certain conditions. They're not asking for money.
Doesn't stop you having the requirement to acknowledge, identify where you've sourced them from, but they are there for free use. There are a number of websites to provide it, but you just need to be conscious of what you're looking at and ensuring that the material is in fact deemed to be free. Not an easy task, and again I'd refer it back to wherever you've got those issues, I'd refer it back to your librarian or your copyright officer at your institution.
A lot of stuff can be accessed on the internet, but you still have to check the terms and conditions of the licence, find out who the original creator is, and get permission if your use isn't covered by the Educational Statutory licence. If it's a reputable website put up by an organisation, they'll usually have a terms and conditions link. Usually next to the Contact Us link on the website there will be a copyright and privacy disclaimer, and that will usually give you what you can and can't do with it.
The Central Permissions Register is very beneficial, and clearly if we have licences and permissions listed on that register that don't incur a charge, i.e. the copyright owner has given us permission to use them, then far better for us to identify that. The other issue with regards to a central registry is that it's potentially shareable across the organisation, so that if you develop licence agreements, or you, even better, you get permissions to use with no charge, then other departments, other individuals, teaching staff can utilise those where there's a common theme.
So check out Flickr, so you're legally able to go to this site and use their images so long as you attribute back to the photographer and the source. There are other sites you can go to, but I would really strongly encourage you to check sites that have a Creative Commons licence, because an image is frightfully expensive.
So if there are systems in place so that copyright is observed, works are attributed, there's a permissions register, it's easy to get permission for things that you want to use, then TAFE teachers really don't have to do much work.